Welcome back once again. New video. I'm starting to get on a roll here now. Funny thing happened yesterday after I made the video about the Vega 500 and the 432R. Um, in another group, or I don't know if he was in the Cerwin-Vega group or another group, but he contacted me and he said I'm one of the haters. I said okay. He said I and this is standard. This is so standard for most haters. They only heard like one model, or they've heard something and they went to a place and they heard it. He said, I had a friend who had a pair, um, and this was back in the 90s, he said, and I heard it and I wasn't impressed. I said, okay, that's fair. We have all different tastes and likes, and I don't like all. It's not like I like unlimited liking for all models that Cerwin-Vega made. There's certain models I'm like, that doesn't appeal to me. So he said, I consider myself. I was thinking like, oh, okay, here we go. He said, I consider myself fairly knowledgeable in audio. He said, I'm not one of these snobby audiophile, but I'm an audiophile because I love music. And I'm like, okay, that's a good start. He said, if you're going to convince me to get a pair of speakers from Cerwin-Vega that would convince me to have a different opinion of Cerwin-Vega, what would you recommend? And I was like, what kind of question is this? I was thinking, like, is this some kind of a trick question? And then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I'll help you out. I can give you some pointers and point you in the right direction. And I was thinking, like, after I had sent him on his way and given him an answer, and he's like, thank you for that, I'm going to check into it. Highly doubt he will go to any length of getting them, but that's okay. But I was thinking, we as a group of fans of this brand Cerwin-Vega, we always get bashed. We and the both guys. And we're always out there sticking our neck out in discussions, and we're like trying to convince people and stuff like that. And very often in conversations and in comments, I'm being asked, well, I've heard the D series, I heard the VS series, I heard the DX, and they all sound the same. So if we ever get into a conversation and they say, well, point me to a Cerwin-Vega speaker, then that will be different. So if you try to convince someone to listen to something, or they ask you straight out, hey, if you're going to point me to a speaker from Cerwin-Vega that is different than what I think it is, which model should you direct them to? And what should you kind of like recommend? I made a little list, and this will, I would say, most likely change anybody's mind, the perception that they have. And I always tell people, you have to think about this in a very logical way, and logical way means if you want the best type of sound out of a type of speaker, you have to have the best type of equipment to do it with. So you can't just buy a pair of speakers and hook them up to like a $50 receiver and thinking that, this is going to do the trick. No, there's more to it than so. You have to have good signal source, even if it's like, doesn't matter if it's if you play LPs or CDs or MP3 or lossless or FLAC or whatever you use, the source of information and music has to be good. And of course, you have to have good amplifiers. So let's say we're operating with perfect amplifiers, perfect CD player, okay? I always tell people, you have to invest in good amps. Good amps is good speakers, and good amps are really, really, really alpha and omega. But here we go. I have made a little list here, and on this list there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 models that I would, well, not just 9 models. There's 9 different. One is two of them are series and the rest of them are models. So let's just jump into the series, because the these has these two series have at least two models each. So the first one is the CT series, where you had that series was made in Denmark by Dali, in Nurhager. Really, really good speakers, good sounding speakers. Have the both of the best of the both worlds. They have the some kind of Cerwin-Vega DNA, but with a Dolly deliverance, and it's a very smooth and good combination. I like the CT series. I've heard them quite a bit. The 330 is amazing. But the 165 is really good as well. So if you have the chance, try and listen to them. They will give you an aha moment, and not that Take on Me aha, but an aha. And so the CT series is absolutely, if that's kind of maybe more for the very, very extreme or the close to extreme audiophile dude that you come across. Those who sit around listening to jazz all day and just listening for the small subtle differences in the sound. The CT series is a good option for those type of people. And then you have the CVT series, where you have the 10-inch model and the 12-inch model, and both of them are towers with two mids and a tweeter. They are also, this two can be recommended to the same type of person that you do the CT, but also a broader range of people. Very, very balanced, a little bit more bassy than the CT, because it has like a 10 and a 12-inch woofer depending on the model you're choosing. CVT 100, for instance, has a 10-inch. The CVT 120 has a 12-inch. So a little bit more bass, a little bit more openly and maybe more grand sounded than the CT. The CT is maybe better sounding, better sound quality in the mids on voices and stuff like that, and maybe a little bit more detailed than the CVT. But don't get me wrong, the CVT series is amazing. I have owned CVT. I've sold CVT. Amazing speakers. That would change anyone's mind on that Cerwin-Vega are screamers and dunky 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 boom 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 speakers. Now, if we go a little bit, the other one, and these are fairly the newer ones. These are like the 90s and early 2000 models. If we go further back in time, well, we can go a little bit back in time, early 90s. There was a model that Cerwin-Vega released that was called Q1. It has a tweeter and a 10-inch woofer. If you have never heard of Q1, it's amazing. It's not the one that's going to shake the room. It's not the one you bring out the scooter songs and trying to have a rave party, okay? This is the alpha and omega Cerwin-Vega speaker for audiophiles. This is such a correct sounding speaker. To some Cerwin-Vega fans, it is maybe too correct, too good, too right. Because you have to remember, a lot of Cerwin-Vega people like a loud, bangy, boomy sound. I like that too, but I like a balanced sound too. But the Q1 is extremely correct. And it reproduced the music just the way it was recorded, and that's what you want from an audiophile grade speaker. The Q1 Cerwin-Vega really hit the nail on the head with that one. That was a good speaker. So if you have the chance of getting one, absolutely run out and get one. And if you want to try and convince someone to think differently of Cerwin-Vega, Q1 is the one way you can direct them to achieve that goal. Now, I'm just going to cross out some here. The next one that I want to say that you can direct people to, but it's maybe a little bit more difficult because it's harder to find, is either one of the versions of the 1215. It doesn't matter if the MK1 or the MK2. The 1215, and it doesn't matter if it's the European version or the American version. It doesn't matter. They have the same sound signature and they sound amazing. They are great speakers. But hey, hold on here now. The 1215 bumps it up a notch from both the CVT and the CT and the Q1 when it comes to amplifier requirements. The CTs can do it with a 100 watt great class A, B, or class A amplifier. The CVT the same, they can do well with 150 watts, 200 watts. The Q1 the same, 100, 150, 200 watts, but of good quality, of course. When we're talking about the 1215, now we're talking about the speaker that has a bigger demand on an amplifier. So here you would go 250 and up and have a good quality brand amplifier. Don't buy one of these shitty, cheap PA amplifiers that has a lot of bragging watts, but has sound quality that really stinks. So I would use a good hi-fi amplifier. I am all for using pro amplifiers where that is due. And I'm saying big box speakers, if you want to party and you play loud, go out. If you don't care about sound quality, go out and get a pro audio amplifier with tons of watt, and you will be happy. But if you want to sit down and have good sound quality, even from big Cerwin-Vegas, go out and spend $2, $3, $4, $5,000 on a good amp. I don't care. Go out and do that. Get some good hi-fi amplifiers of 250 watts, 250 watts and up. They're normally very good, and you will have a total different result. So 1215 can be a good choice for any hater, but here's the problem with the 1215. They are extremely hard to find these days. The people who have them don't want to sell them for a very good reason. And if they sell them, be aware that in the United States right now, you're probably in a soft market, not the top end market, because COVID kind of blew things up. It blew things up, and it kind of like died down in 2023. Yeah, last half of 2023, it died down and the prices started to really tank. So in a market right now in the United States that I have seen, I saw a one pair for sale that was, well, it wasn't for sale yet, but he was going to put them for sale and he was asking what he could put for them. And people were saying that you could ask like $1,500, $2,000. I said $1,500 would probably be, you probably would be able to sell them for $1,500 in this type of market. $2,000, you probably will be sitting on them for a while, just because people don't have that type of money right now. In a strong market, you can get $2,000, $2,500 for those any day. I've seen them go for that. The last pair I saw sold was in Texas. I think it was Longhorn, Texas, or something like that, and it sold for $2,200, and that was on I think it was on Facebook Marketplace, or was it OfferUp or something like that. But they sold. I because I called the dude and I said, I texted him and I said, hey, I'm interested, because I was ready to spend $1,500 on a pair. And he said, I sold them last week for $2,200. So I'm like, okay. So, and that was 8-9 months ago. So right now they're hard to find, and if you find them, you have to pay probably around $1,500 to between $1,500 and $1,700. Q1 you can get for $200, $300, $400. $400 are the way I see most of them. The CVT is hard to find. For some reason, I don't know. The CT the same. But if you find a pair of CTs, the 165s you could probably get for $250, $300. The 330s you could probably get for $300, $350. The CVTs, if you find them, the CVT 100, I've seen them as low as 175. The CVT 120, the last pair I saw for sale was probably a year and a half ago, and that was listed for $250. There was no mentioning of shipping or anything on those prices. So we have covered Q1, CT, and CVT, and 1215. Another model that will, in my mind, shut up most haters is the S1 from early 80s, 82, 83, around there. The S1 is an extremely amazing speaker, and it was like back then you had a lot of good, in the 70s and the early 80s, you had a lot of good small to medium sized speakers from Cerwin-Vega that was very efficient, so-called bookshelf speakers, stand speakers. The S1 was maybe the best one of the lot. Um, Anyone who hear the S1, and don't worry about the bag inside, you really don't need to pay attention to it. It won't make that big of a difference. A little bit on the damping side of the woofer, yes. You can probably compensate some of that with some polyfill if you want to, but not too much. The S1 is extremely balanced, extremely good sounding speaker, and it was a little bit of an upscale model compared to the others like the HEDs and stuff like that. So if you can find an S1, and most people who hear S1, because I used an S1, a pair of S1 one time in a blind test, where someone came in and they were listening to some Keith speakers, and I said, "Hey, let me do something for you," and I seek behind some things secretly switched the connection of the cables, and I hooked them up to S1, and I said, "What do you think of this?" And he's like, "Well, I think I like that sound better." And so he would take the he bought the Keefs, but he would have taken the S1s. But I said that was not for sale. So when I revealed to him what it was, he was like, "That I never expected that." And he was the same type of guy who had he was like, "I would never buy Cerwin-Vega. I don't like the sound, blah blah blah." After I did a blind thing on him with the S1, he was like, "I can't believe that. I can't believe you sprung a Cerwin-Vega blind test on me, and I like that better than the Keef." But I'm happy because I sold the Keef. And this is like 25 years ago, 26 years ago. So maybe more, 27 maybe. So, I know this works because I've done it many times. When I had the store, I did blind tests many, many times with very highly regarded speakers. And I did blind tests with Cerwin-Vegas. And I'll tell you, I had some really cool, fun experiences with that. But the S1, absolutely a model you can tell people to go and try out. That will change people's mind. We're getting down here now. The next model, and this is one of my favorite models. This is the 316R. It has such a great sound. Yesterday I was raving about the 432R and the Vega 500s. The 316R, in my mind, in my ears, how I like sound and how I like music, is maybe the third best speaker in my taste. This is a speaker that really speaks to me on so many levels. And I can sit down and I can listen to Dire Straits or Pink Floyd, and I can just enjoy it because I like that type of music. And when you hear, let's say you put on Dire Straits and Sultans of Swing, for instance, or Brothers in Arms, those two songs on a 316R, let me tell you, that's one hell of an emotional roller coaster. You sit there and you go like, "Damn, this sounds really freaking good." And what I did one time, because I had a pair of 316, and I really that's probably one of the speaker pairs that I regret the most of selling in my life. What I did back then was I did a crossover upgrade. I changed out all the 5 and 10% caps, and I put 1% caps in there of high quality. I spent a chunk of money on the crossovers, and I'll tell you, what an experience. It was so good. So if you really want to tell someone that really are a Cerwin-Vega hater, "Hey, what can you do? Which model can you point me to change my mind?" Absolutely, I recommend telling them, "Hey, go and get a pair of 316R and hook them up to a really good amp." Because when I had the 316R, I was a Parasound HCA, what was the model number? 2500, 2200, something like that. I think it was 2200. HCA 2200, I think it was. It was a 225, 250 watt amplifier. Huge fucker. It sounded so good. I regret selling that amp, and I regret selling those speakers because that was a match made in freaking heaven. So 316 all day long as a recommendation to people who hate Cerwin-Vega if they want to have their mind checked or their opinions changed. The next one I talked about yesterday is the 432R. And what more can I say? That it's hard to find. I know. It's extremely hard to find. And if you find it, you probably have to do some work to it. Re-foaming, re-coning, maybe some work on the mid-ranges because they tend to like dry out a little bit. And you probably need to do some upgrades on the crossover as well with new caps and blah, blah, blah. The woofer net should be okay because if I remember correctly, it's a cloth woofer. But that is one speaker, and if this is a speaker that you have to have room for because it's grand, it's huge. But absolutely a speaker I would recommend people to say, hey, you want to change your opinion on Cerwin-Vega? Go out and find a pair of 432R, listen to them, and if you want to like them, buy them because they're going to be that good. They are really that good. My top 3 list of personal favorites: Vega 500, 432R, and 316R. Those are my 3 top ones. And then after that is D9. I like the D9. My list is maybe weird compared to your guys, but that's how I see it. So the 432R is absolutely a model you should tell people to go and listen to. Now, we have 2 more here, but one of them are kind of like a 2E for one. But I'm going to take the last one, the first one here, that is single, and that's the 12TR, the tower speaker. This was part of Gene Cerwinski's signature line, and oh my lordy, is it good. This is also on my this is in my top 5 speakers. Maybe ahead of the D9. This is ahead of the D9. Both of these 2 are ahead of the D9. So 12TR. When I heard that the first time, I was not impressed. I have to say, I was like, all this hype. This was like back in 89, 90, 91. No, it was 91. And I was down at the Hi-Fi Club in Oslo a lot. And I think it was an employee or a customer or something that was down there had brought him in, and they were down in the demo room or the demo area, and because they was trying to get up against some other speakers from, I think it was from Dali, and I heard it, and I went in there, and I knew a lot of the people who worked there, and I was on close, terms with most of them. So I was thinking, I come in and listen to this because I really want to listen to this signature model. And I remember I was not impressed. And I was like, there must be something wrong here. And the guy who worked at Hi-Fi Club, and I think he was a customer who had brought him in, he was the same opinion. He said, there's something wrong here, because he said, a family member of mine have had these. So he remembered that the sound was different. So they did some tweaking, they looked at a few things, and they ended up doing some crossover work upstairs at Hi-Fi Club. Half an hour, 45 minutes later, they came down, and they had done something to the speakers. I don't know what. And they hooked them up again, and it sounded totally different. Totally different. Maybe there was some polarity issues on the crossover. That might have been. But I think that was what it was, because it sounded so lifeless. It was just flat as fuck. So they did something. So I think there maybe was some internal polarity issues. Once they came down again and they hooked it up, and at that time they put it up. They hooked it up to a Mondial amplifier, and if I remember correctly, this is the one with a V cutout on the top of it. It was one of my. It was like a hi-fi porn back in the day in the Hi-Fi Club and magazine or newspaper that they gave out every quarter. I remember they had just gotten those Mondial Aragon amplifiers in. I think it was 150 watts per channel, if I'm not, or 175, something in that area, or maybe 200. It sounded so much better and sounded so good. I was sold. I was sold right there and then. And the guy wanted to sell them or trade them in or something, but because he was going to get those new speakers from Dali, I think it was, or was it Snell? Maybe it was Snell he was looking at. It was Snell. Yeah, he wanted to buy some new type of Snell speakers, and I was so ready to buy those speakers from him. But I back then, the way I lived back then, and just become a father and stuff, I couldn't do it. I couldn't justify that. So that was some amazing speakers. 12. That was the first time I heard them, and I've heard them several times after that, and they are just amazing, amazing speakers. Most people who have them will tell you that they are freaking amazing. So that was the 12TR. The next two on the list, I kind of like, this is one, but it's /2. It's a 2-for-1. It's either, you can tell them to go and either find the 12T or the 15T. The only difference between the 12T and the 15T is the 12-inch woofer and the 15-inch woofer. And some people might say, hey, what's the difference between the 12T and the 12TR? Well, the 12TR has a rear-firing tweeter horn, which the 12T does not have. So the 12T and the 15T is two models that I would absolutely recommend. I have not heard is weird. I've not heard the 12T, but like I said, I've heard the 12TR, but I've not heard the 12T. But I've been so freaking lucky in my life to hear the 15T a couple of times, and if the 15T gives you an indication of what the 12T is, I have no problem in recommending the 12T as well. But based on the 15T that I have heard, it is such a lively speaker. I don't know what it is, but there's something about that cabinet type, the tower type, and that woofer being the way it is, and they use great drivers in there though. It's like I said earlier, it's the Vega 500, the 432R, the 316R, the 12TR, the 15T, and I'm sure the 12T goes in there too. And then you have the D9, my top 6 favorite speakers in my mind. The 15T is not as bass heavy as other 15-inch models. Like, you can't compare them to the LS or the RE38 or the VS150 or even the AT100. It's maybe more in the bass category. It's maybe more towards the D series, because the D9 is not as bass heavy as some of the other 15-inch models. That's why a lot of people don't like the D9 as much as the VS and the RE and so DX and so on, because then the D9 has a little bit more punchy, tight, dry bass, not that big, extended, roomy, soft, moist bass, if you know what I mean. So the 15T is kind of like a little bit more like that, very tight, very responsive, and very fast, very correct sounding. So there you go. If you want to try and convince someone, tell them to go for either Q1, 316R, the 1215, the CVT 100 or CVT 120, the CT 165 or the CT 330, or the 12T, the 15T, the 12TR, the 432R, or the S1. These are all models that would change any hater into a lover. If they say that doesn't, after listening to them for extended period of time, if they're not convinced then that these are stands out from the rest of the Cerwin-Vega models, then you know they're just stupid and they're just doing it on spite, and it's a game to them. But if someone comes up to you and are like, hey, I'm willing to listen to some speakers to see if I can change my mind, I have an open mind, yes, then you can tell them that these models are absolutely the ones they should go for. Of course, you might have a different view and a different opinion, but to me, these models here are light years ahead of many of the others. I'm not saying that the others are bad, because let me tell you something. There's a lot of other models that I have heard, that I have owned over the years, that I really like, that really comes close to these that really are sniffing on the door or knocking on the door to come in. Maybe I just haven't had the right amplifier at the time to listen to them. Maybe there was something going on that could have changed my mind if I had done things differently. Maybe some models would have been in this club of mine. So you never know. I have a sneaking suspicion that there's the one model that I probably would. But, there are different of opinions, and there's different of how we like the sound. And there's, of course, based on the type of music we play. Someone who likes jazz is not going to have the same experience with one type of speaker that someone else does that likes metal, if you know what I mean. And so on and so on. So it's very, very personal what we like. And it's very like based on taste. And taste is so different. But if you want to try and convince someone, give them this list. And I'm pretty sure they will come around. Until next time, guys, take care.